and welcome to ET Insight, where we get you a 360-degree view of the big picture in business and economy. I'm Sridhar Ramakrishnan, and here's what we have for you on the show today. Air India is in a big crisis once again. So who brought the Maharaja down on his knees? Is it possible to ever turn around the fortunes of Air India, or is it too little, too late? And how serious is the government in giving a new lease on life to the national carrier? Our top story first. Air India is in a financial mess, and the blame game has begun once again. Its pilots are unwilling to take pay cuts and are blaming the board for mismanagement. The board and the government in turn are blaming circumstances. So the question we're asking today is, who really killed Air India? And is it better off dead than alive? Nikhil Shivadas gets you the answers.
This scene is a familiar one. And by now, the Air India management is adept at dealing with these uncomfortable situations. But don't mistake this for a regular battle between the management and the employees. Rather, it's a warning of the big mess brewing inside.
I am the man. I am the minister. I declared, I said very openly to you, so far they are on the strike, we will not talk to them.
Mr. Arvind Jadhav, when he came, he said, I'll turn around this company. He said, all of us, he came on TV, he gave a statement, I'll turn around. What turnaround he did? From 475 crores, now it is whooping 16,000 crores of losses. Who is responsible for it?
That's an important question, and one that must be answered sooner than later. After all, the national carrier has been bleeding for years together. According to the Ministry of Civil Aviation, NACIL's losses are on account of a decline in passenger load factor due to domestic and international competition, a decline in projected yield due to the large-scale expansion of capacity by low-fare carriers, and increasing financing costs, depreciation, aircraft maintenance costs and staff costs. Last but not the least, an increase in aviation fuel prices. In fact, fuel is the biggest expense and accounts for nearly 35% of NACIL's overall expenditure, followed by staff costs. While fuel costs are determined by the market, the company can control its staff costs. And it wants to do so, but there's severe opposition.
It needs a full understanding and cooperation between different arms of the institution. And suppose you take for Air India. Air India can need the full support and involvement of the entire working force. Everything, start from captain down to everybody.
Without synergizing the employees of these two organizations, this merger cannot take place properly. That was ignored then, but now you are paying the price for that.
Next in line is depreciation and interest. In 2005 and 2006, Air India and Indian Airlines had placed orders for 68 and 43 new aircraft from Boeing and Airbus. The interest and depreciation on the new fleet is slowly eating into the company's cash flows. This situation is likely to worsen over the years because these deals stretch over a long period of time. For instance, of the 68 aircraft ordered for 34,000 crore rupees, Air India has only received 38 airplanes until now. The balance will be delivered over a period of time ending in 2014. From fleet costs to outstanding dues, in January this year, Air India's total dues to the Airport Authority of India stood at 720 crore rupees. Its outstanding dues to other agencies were about 3,050 crore rupees. This financial mess has rendered NACIL incapable of paying salaries on at least 2 occasions in the recent past. It's a catch-22 situation for the national carrier. Now, on the one hand, it has to cut losses and costs sharply, but on the other hand, it has to replace old craft with new ones to regain market share by expanding capacity. Now, the government has already aided Air India with over 2,000 crore rupees over the past 2 years, but that is not nearly enough. Air India has sought another equity infusion of 3,000 crore rupees to repay its debts and restructure its balance sheet this year. The Ministry of Civil Aviation had requested the Finance Ministry to make a provision of 2,000 crore rupees on this count. But the budget this year has provided for just 1,200 crore rupees. So it looks like the crisis is far from over.
They have almost a $10 to $12 billion debt. They are getting 20 odd 787s in the next 12 to 18 months. That will increase their debt by 4 to 5 billion. So by end of next fiscal, Air India could be having a debt burden of about, my assessment, 12 to 15 billion dollars, and they might have a combined losses of $6 billion plus.
So what really went wrong, and how did this mammoth national carrier come slipping from number 1 to number 4 on the league tables?
This is a market driven sector, and depending upon the demand, accordingly the supply has to be managed, but it has to be managed with safety and orderliness.
According to reports, the Comptroller and Auditor General of India, or CAG, has found that Air India managed its funds unscrupulously and availed a working capital loan of 19,207.4 crore rupees in July last year, versus the actual working capital requirement of 4,000 to 4,500 crore rupees. Air India reportedly could not utilize its expanded capacity properly and did not plan its routes to reduce cash losses. So despite lower fares than its competitors, below average on-time performance and poor services led to a lower passenger load factor.
The competition is snapping very hard. The die-hard supporters and brand loyal users of Air India, they are feeling the pinch now. So considering all this, and not to forget the huge debt sitting on the books of Air India, I guess some action has to be taken on a ASAP basis. We do not have the option of letting this fester for a very long time.
This is not the first time that the management of Air India has come under scrutiny. According to a report by the Committee on Public Sector Undertakings tabled in Parliament in March last year, the root cause of NASL's problems is the merger of Air India and Indian Airlines in 2007. The report states that in the pre-merge scenario, Indian Airlines had registered profits between 2003 and 2006, and so did Air India. In 2006 and 7, the losses incurred by both companies totaled 688.2 crore rupees. These losses multiplied following the merger. That, according to the report, suggested that something was radically wrong with either the projections of the benefits of the merger or with the implementation of the merger.
I don't know of any two losing companies merging. You see, normally what happens is when one company does well, a company which is not doing so well merges into it. Now here in this particular case, I don't think either of them were in a position to take over the other. So we've merged one, maybe probably the idea of merger may have been to bail Air India out. But you see, it resulted in both the airlines suffering very badly.
The committee noted that it was concerned that the merger of the erstwhile Indian Airlines and Air India was an ill-conceived and erroneous decision, neither arrived at by the two airlines on their own accord, nor mutually considered by them to be in their best interests. Proof of that is the fact that in the years preceding the merger, the two airlines were expanding fleet and ordering aircraft in order to better deal with India's open sky policy, which permitted private carriers to operate in the sector. The committee stated that at this crucial juncture, Indian Airlines was rebranded and its brand equity in terms of goodwill and performance was frittered away with the whimsical decision of the merger.
What is the price sectors for Indian Airlines and even to Air India? The Gulf and Singapore. Now they had an Air India flight, an Indian Airlines flight and an Air India Express flight flying to Singapore, and similarly the routes to Gulf were also triplicated. So, and they had 3 sets of officials, you had 3 offices or 2 offices. I mean, you don't run an airline. If you call it a merged entity, they could have had just one airline operating.
The committee has criticized the Ministry of Civil Aviation, saying that it was disconcerted to note that having imposed the merger of the two carriers, the ministry showed little initiative in monitoring the progress of the merger plan. It stated that the utter lack of sincerity on the part of the Ministry of Civil Aviation manifests in its failure to ensure continuity in leadership at the company during the nascent stages of the merger. And finally, it stated that it took strong objection to the ministry and NASL camouflaging the failures on the pretext of the rising fuel prices and the world recession.
You cannot attribute Air India's losses to fuel anymore. Fuel is a common element for all airlines. Indian carriers, they pay the same kind of cost for it. Why is it that their losses are not of the order of what Air India losses are? It is primarily because Air India has failed to define and refine its product to lure passengers on the strength of the product and not on the strength of low fares.
Industry insiders allege that Air India and Indian Airlines have been asset stripped these past few years for the benefit of select private carriers. Others claim that the rationalization of routes by Air India and Indian Airlines has also been done for the benefit of the private sector. These are big allegations and are difficult to prove, and the staff is not taking it lightly.
Our chairman is incompetent. He is dishonest. He is corrupt. He is giving the lucrative flights to the private owners. It is evident. All of you know that. What other proof you know that? What other proof you want?
The proof may not be there, but the protests are getting louder, directly putting politicians and bureaucrats in the line of fire. And now the big question is whether NACIL will ever turn around.
So is there a magic formula to save the national carrier? Find out after this short break. Stay with us.